Buenos dias. My name is Bert de Vries. I'm the director of the City Archives in Amsterdam and the president of the Royal Association of Archivists in the Netherlands as well. It's an honor for us to be here. Actually, we love Barcelona, of course. And by the way, congratulations with the win on Real Madrid on last Sunday. What do we see if we look outside? We see a lot of things, of course, but one of the main things which is relevant for us archivists is a digital transformation that goes faster and faster, and technical innovations such like artificial intelligence. It creates challenges, but above all, it creates opportunities. Not keeping the records is the central point of attention anymore, but accessibility. And that's why our new mission statement of the City Archives is optimizing accessibility for our collections on behalf of the public worldwide. And we created a special department on accessibility and digital innovations, of which Marc Holtman is the head. And Marc, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bert. And thank you for inviting us here to show you a bit of what we are doing in Amsterdam, indeed in the mission of optimizing access to our archives. I promise you I have a lot of slides, so if nobody's going to stop me, I will speak until the lunch. So I hear when I have 5 minutes left. I have a lot of slides with very practical examples. And I promise you, I'm not going to be going deep into technical details. It's going to be a brief overview of what we do regarding to giving access to historical and modern archives. Before we dive into this, maybe for you it's nice to see where we actually come from. This is the Netherlands, at least it was like this 100 years ago. It still looks a bit like this. Amsterdam is there, right at the water. Our archive is in the historical center of Amsterdam, there. So, and if you ever visit Amsterdam, please be welcome to visit us because it's right in the center and it's very accessible. This is the building and it looks from the outside like this. And I also show you this because I'm going to speak to you about digital access, but it's also important to show you how and why this building for us is still important. A bit about what we have and what we do. For the City Archives Amsterdam, we host 60 kilometers of paper archives, and the amount of digital archives is increasing rapidly. We have municipal archives, because it's important we are part of the city of Amsterdam, so we're connected to the information management in the city. We have church archives, family archives, and archives of organizations. And the balance between municipal archives and the rest is like 50-50. So it's like 60 kilometers of archives we host. That's in 2 repositories. One is here and one is in the north of the city. We host documents, photos, drawings, prints, and I come also back on one important archive, and that's a notary archive, which is on the UNESCO heritage list. Okay. Oh yeah, and we have approximately 100,000 visitors on site, and like more than 1 million online, and there work like 80 people at the archives. We have 2 parts. First, what I show you is the bricks part. Our building is still very important. It's an open environment, which you can just walk in, and you can speak to our employees. You can do your research there. We have several exhibitions, sometimes there are 2 or 3 running at the same time. We have an educational program, quite extended, and we host several cultural activities, like talks and a museum night. So for us, this still is a very important way of showing who we are and what we have. So you could say, this is our bricks part. So as I told you, if you ever are in Amsterdam, please be welcome to visit us and see the building. But for now, in this 45 minutes, it's mainly about the digital part of that, the digital counterpart. So you could say the bits. On one hand, we have the bricks, our building and the activities that we host there, but we also have the bits, and that's coming to be, it's already increasingly important. Well, this is a short preview of what the treasure room looks like, but we also have digital treasures. Since I think it's already almost 25 years, we invested heavily in our digital presence. And this is just a brief example of channels and ways that we present our archives in a digital way. And if you go to archief.amsterdam, you will find this system, and in this system you can just search through the collection in the part that's digitally, that's scanned and digital available. So this is the URL. Very important, when we started digitization, also already I think 15 years ago, we said, yeah, where do you have to start? Is it just we do our highlights and we do just the treasures? Because you see, it's 60 kilometers of archives. Where do you start? But we presented this mission for us, and that was, we want to enable all archival research 24/7 online. So that means that you're not going to make selections, but you regard your whole collection as something that should be digitized, because we say if it's not digital, it doesn't exist anymore. This is an example of how this looks online. At this moment, from the 60 kilometers, we have 20% digitized. I come back later with that and what this means for the other 80%. And the first thing that we actually did, and also why do I tell you this? Because I should talk to you about AI, and that's true, and I'm going to do that also. But before that we can dive into the AI part of optimizing access to archives, especially about these kinds of paper archives, you first have to make it digital. So investing in digitization, scanning, is for us really important. We do this in several ways. We scan projects, but also this service we already have for several years. Here we have just a file in an archive, which is not digitalized. You click the button, and then we just go and scan. It doesn't matter, this file, if this is one document or if it's 400 documents, if it's a book, if it's leaves, it doesn't matter. We scan every week in this way, 25,000 scans a week. We have a max on that, but basically in this way, all research that's being done could be done digital. We do this now for several years, and I think it's nice to show you this picture. Because what you see in the green line, which is rapidly declining, that's our requests in the study room. And this white line, that's request and scanning on demand. And what you see, there is a max on that, so that is not going really, really up. But this line is also really important to show you, because this is the amount of requests. This is the amount of users. And what we see here, that from 2019, we do have more requests digitally in scanning on demand than we have users in our reading room. And that was in the COVID period, when our study room was closed, nobody could get in. We still had the scanning on demand service running. And now this means that, and we also did some surveys with our visitors and the users of this, and most of them say, we prefer to have the digital service above the physical service. So that's rather important. So these are two statements of people that make use of this service. So it's also very internationally, and people like what we do and just want more and more. I see I'm very good in time, so I can bring you to the examples. And this is also what you see regarding in the amount of scans that we produce every year, and that's also increasing. And as I said, we now have approximately 20% of these 60 kilometers being digitized. This also helps all kinds of research. We tend to focus on historical research, but I think it's nice to show you this one, because this was done in COVID time, and it was a research project by the Radboud University, and that's not per definition in historical research, but this is about a spreading of infection diseases, in which they use historical archives. So to do predictions in the now, they use data, especially data from the past. So this can keep you thinking, if indeed they use these digital documents as a condition to perform this kind of research, what does this mean? And if you be a bit on a critical side of what we are doing with scanning, you could say, yeah, that's all nice and well, but does this increase accessibility to archives? In a way it does, yes. The distance between, like say, the collection and the user becomes closer, but the access to a scanned document does not really improved. So what are we going to do about that? First, we started this a few years ago as a crowdsourced platform because we thought, okay, if we want to have better access to these scanned documents, let's ask the crowd to index our archives. And we are doing this for also already several years. This is an example of a registry. You see a name, this name is being highlighted, and the crowd indexes this, so they type this in as data entry, and the result is that you can find this. You look for this name, Pedro Cisara, and you find a document. This works really well. We can't do without the crowd anymore because they do an enormous amount of work. And it's like for registries like this, it's working absolutely perfect. And if you look at the last 10 years, we had more than 10 million names described in this way of 2 million scans. But still, this is work that's absolutely perfect, that our ambassadors of users, who are quite a lot of people, help us with indexing. But still, yeah, we have now 2 million scans, but we have like 60 in the repository. So this is still a very slow process. Then something happened. This project was being initiated by the Huygens Institute in Amsterdam, and what they wanted to do was to give a better view on the cultural industry in Amsterdam in the 17th centuries. So with painters like Rembrandt and Frans Hals, so getting a better view of how this industry worked at the time. And the archive for that is this. The notary archives, we have like 3 kilometers of them, just paper on shelves, is a treasure for this kind of information. So what we established was that we could scan quite a substantial part of this archive to give better access to. And we could get this on the UNESCO Memory of the World list, so that gives it quite a substantial meaning and a meaningful archive, which is for us a really treasure of all kinds of context. But here, you will recognize this. This is a typical classic inventory. And if you look at this notary archives, what we see, you don't even have to read Dutch, there is a name, and what does it say? Yeah, we have a book, and it has a date. More, there is not. So if you want to do your research in this archive, you just have to request them, and you can do this digitally, and you browse through them, and hopefully you find something. And also, this is quite a high-level entrance archive, because who can read this? You need to do your studies and old manuscript handwritings, and then hopefully you can read this. And there's also Old Dutch. So this is a bit tricky in regarding optimizing access. Well, what happened is that we got a collaboration with Transcribus. I think, who knows Transcribus in the room? Yeah, some people. Transcribus is an initiative of the University of Innsbruck, and what they developed was technology, AI technology or machine learning. It depends a bit on your definition of AI. And this makes it possible to make handwritings searchable. Of course, we knew from print archives that OCR was quite powerful to make it searchable, but not for handwritten documents. And what Transcribus did, and City Archives Amsterdam was one of the first big projects, was to try to make this handwritten text searchable. And now we are, I think, like 8 years from the start of this project, and we can say now that it is possible to make everything that we have scanned searchable by using AI to make handwritten text searchable or readable. How does this work? I have a few examples. This is an old text. there is a block being placed, it recognizes lines, and then from the lines it generates your pattern and your text. What we first did was, again, use our crowd to help us because these models that you use, they are not perfect from the beginning. So you need to train them. What we did is that we used our volunteers from the crowd platform to not index the material, but to correct the output of the AI. So by doing this, we corrected the AI output, and the output of that was being used to train the models. And now, at this moment, we can say that this technology is so far that for the notary archives, we can, by just training these models to a very minimum level, to have all this material searchable. So that's great news. And oh yeah, I also can show you this. What we see here, this is a demonstration. You can do this yourself, by the way. The Transcribes site has a kind of thing that you can just put a scan in. I did this here, and you see I choose as language Dutch. I think Spanish is already also one of the languages that's being introduced in this. The great thing is also that models that being trained for a certain language sometimes can be used for a different language. So this is also, I think, a very nice example of two things, that it works. So we have to make sure, I think worldwide, and especially in Europe, to have our heritage being digitized and work closely together as archives, but also with our users to get this information that's hidden in these treasures of archives, but to make it searchable. Here we see what happened. This was just being in the beta version. There is being in description. I haven't done any correction on this, but this is what we found. But that's just step one. What we afterwards did was to put this output of Transcribes into a search engine. And this is, if you go to archief.amsterdam, you can have access to this. It's for free. You can just go to it. You search. And what I did here, I searched for Barcelona. And what I find is this document that I showed you. So everything that's being transcribed and the output of that is being put in this search engine, and you just can look and search. And then you find this with the lines, and you see the search, the keyword that we searched on. So this gives a completely different perspective on accessibility of archives. This is an example of another scan, another document. And this was a painting of the painter Rembrandt. And this painting wasn't known yet before. So this also doing this, and the collaboration with Golden Agents from Huygens Institute meant that we could find information in these archives just by making it searchable that wasn't known yet. And this is a news item for that. So a newly found Rembrandt wasn't known, and now it's on the list. But there is more, and I think this is what it makes exciting and also very interesting, because this whole project we started with the aim of making the cultural industry of Amsterdam searchable or more visible. But there's much more in these archives. And when you make it searchable, for free in fact, you get that you can search on everything. And these are two examples of publications in Holland about the history of slavery and the involvement of Amsterdam in this. And these two books, and there are many more at the moment, were only possible because we now have this information searchable. So everything we knew about slave trade, which still of course is true, to have this data searchable and to be able to retrieve the data from the information makes new historical research possible. And yeah, this is for slavery, but we believe if we make the whole archive searchable, if we scan everything and we make the whole archive searchable, there is a new world for historians, and that gives us a new perspective on history, yeah, for us of Amsterdam, but what we know is worldwide. So this about notary archives. This is where we started, and which is just plain text and worked quite well. So you can ask, yeah, but these archives are so different because that was 17th century deeds. We also have something like this. This is civil status. This is another project that we started. And the thing here is that you have this individual deeds. So if you make this searchable, you don't have the deed. So again, with Transcribus, we developed another algorithm that identifies the separate deeds. And by doing that, what you retrieve is not just the plain text of the page, but the deed itself. Yeah, and I come back to this because then you have the deed. But maybe we can use AI to do something special with that. I have a demonstration and that will come later. But I show you this, that yeah, for where we are now with making this archive searchable, the technology is really going fast. Also for this is an example of what we are now doing, in which it is a bit mixed. It's handwritten text, it's typed text, it's a register, we have labels and stuff. Also this now, and you can call it ATR, is something that's developing really quickly. So ATR stands for automatic text retrieval. Or this. This is an index on an archive. And as you can see also, this is not just plain text, but it's a table. And you see on the orange lines that the way that we use now this written text recognition, we also can recognize tables. And you get a table back and not just plain text. Is this important? Yes, because I showed you this historical research that we do, but this is an example of something that happened in Amsterdam just a few years ago. There's a big problem with old walls and the canals, and also on bridges, because they are a bit brittle and they're old, and here is one example of where it collapsed. The thing is, to repair them, you need drawings, and these are in the archive. But this archive is really, really complex. If you want to get from the index to an actually file of like a bridge or like a wall, it's very complicated. But by making this searchable, oh yeah, and here you see the original index. Yeah, it is really, really complicated. You have to browse and then you find. But what we did now is just to make this searchable, we connected it to the original file in which all the calculations for this bridge appear. And we even connected it to geo-names of old streets and canals in Amsterdam. So by doing this project, we connected everything together, and the access to these drawing files is much, much easier than it ever was before. So I think also an example of what this written text, handwritten text retrieval can add to doing research. And this maybe as a last example of something that's typed where you can retrieve the separate labels, so reference, a notary, it's a paragraph, it's a date. So this means a whole new world of doing research. Not everything is possible. This is an example of what we always also find. This is just, sorry. So, I'll go a bit quick. Oh. So this is all well. Then what we achieve now is that we have archives in the repository. We took them out, we scanned them, so we make the distance shorter. We use technology to index, to retrieve all the text that is in it. We have tables that we can recognize. We can automatically put labels, but that's still quite limited. And what we find out is, for the last 2 years, where new technology, the new generation of AI technology comes in and helps us a lot with doing our next step. Oh, I'm going a bit quick with my, I'm a button happy, trigger happy, or how do you call that? So I'll show you this. Yeah, what we see here is a simple script that we put on ChatGPT, in which we have this deed from the civil registry, and where we just ask in plain text to index that for us. So we didn't do a real script, it was just plain text. ChatGPT gives us here all the names, or all the labels that it found, which is quite something that you can see this. What we did next, and this is just in one go, we extracted all these entities from the register, and we say, okay, get them out and import them in our collection management system. So we had the handwritten text recognition. We put ChatGPT, put all the entities out, and here you see it. It's a pipeline from plain text indexing into our collection management system, and then you just find it, and it's already connected to Wikidata. So I think this is next level accessibility. There is not a person needed to come from something that's being rather very simple, being indexed by HDR with ChatGPT or another large language model. That really doesn't matter. And also the good thing is this is old stuff, so there is no privacy or anything involved, and we have an index. This is, you started already the YouTube. This is another example of, you see plain text, and what we do here is to also to retrieve the entities in this text. It says perform, and we are connecting this to another linked data repository, just to see if we can make automatic linked data from a plain text. And also this, we see, works quite well. You see the output, and it's already connected to Wikidata, also with this, including this image, which is not in our repository. So we have a name in a plain text, we use HER to get it out, ChatGPT indexes, and we have this example where it's even connected to an image that we don't have ourselves. So I think this is something that, gives all of us, and making research, giving a level to that that's being unseen before. I'm speaking really fast, I see. Because I thought I have so many slides, I have to entertain you. So, do I speak too fast? No? Thank you. Another thing, and unfortunately I couldn't find a Spanish translation, but this is also something that I think, if you look at doing research and also internationally, this is again an example of plain text being recognized by HDR, and somewhere here is even a very old word. You should find aderlaten, doesn't matter, but this is all Dutch, and if we put this all Dutch into ChatGPT again, we get an English translation that's quite accurate. Even the old Dutch word for aderlaten is here being translated as bloodletting, which is quite something that it finds out itself. So of course this is not perfect, and of course also the HDR is not perfect, but I think from having just a document on paper in your repository to this that you can search and you can have it translated gives a new dimension. So that brings me to something differently. So I close this now, because what we did here is to look at all you have in your repository. It's paper archive, it's of course from the earliest history of the city until where we are now. It's just paper. The information is locked on the medium, paper, and we think, and we are now also doing a proposal to say, this is all bringing us to such a new dimension and gives such a new view on the actually history of the city that we think scanning everything and making everything searchable, having of all this indexed text, entities retrieved and put context in that, that's not a question of are we going to do that, but is in fact a question of time. We did another example. I can't go too much into details because it would be a very complicated story and it would become too technically. But recently we did also focus on archives that are already digital born. This amount of documents is increasing, and there is something that you really have to know. How is this language being used? How do you put this document in the proper context? And here we used something new, and that's called RAG, Retrieved Augmented Generation. And as I say, to not become too complicated, but what it does is, you have a question in natural language, you ask that to a large language model, and you get an answer. That is how ChatGPT works. But what we did with this was feeding it with a knowledge database. So what we tried is to make this. So from the documents we have, we just didn't put them in the large language model. No, we made a knowledge database. And the aim was to, and I'm going to translate for you, to make it able for users to just type in natural language a question, and this question is, why is there a speed limit of 30 kilometers an hour in Amsterdam? And then to have a generated answer from all kinds of sources, including what we have in the archives. And the technology means that from the digital archive, we tried to make chunks, meaningful parts, from these documents to feed in the knowledge database so that the large language model gives you accurate answers. And there happened something, as I said, I'm not going into technical details, but there happened something very interesting, because what we did is that we used a test group. Because how do you know if your AI engine gives you the right answer? I think you still need humans to test. And so we had a test group of people who really knew what was in these documents, or what the answer on the question actually had to be. And they vary so much in giving value to this answer of the machine that you really don't know, is this now a good answer or not? And also what we saw is that by using different engines and large language models, the variation in answers we got was very varied. So for this project, we think we showed that this worked, but to use this already in a public, open environment to ask questions to is a bit early. So we are not going to implement this yet. And we are also going to think about what's the connection between classical retrieval and using AI to just gives questions in natural language. But still, we can use the same technology, example for manuals. Like now, if you do research in our website, you have to read all these manuals. But we could use this model to just that you type in, how do I find my family's father name who lived in, and then from the manuals that you get an AI-generated answer. So that's a bit safer. And we think it's very promising, but it's not there yet. I should compare with what I showed you before, like in handwritten text recognition. Yeah, then for the last part of this presentation, I want to also say something about something that you could put on top of everything that we are doing, because that's also nice to find these entities, and I showed you also already a bit of what you can do with linking it to Wikidata. But if you look still what we're trying to do, then like this building that we have, there is an entrance there, so good luck finding in. But doing research, maybe you want to find your entrance in another way. And so regarding to this, we invest now quite heavily in linked data. One of the things actually that we did is our standard that we use now for archival description is not ISAG anymore. We decided to choose records in context as our new description model. And we did that, because I'm not going into details of records in context, but we did that because that's the basis for linked data. And we believe that if we can do all this innovation stuff and we can put this all online, but if we not choose the way of connecting to everybody worldwide, then we still create islands. So we believe that also on top of this innovation and on top of this technology, we should aim for to connect to everybody and everywhere worldwide. So linked data for us is a really important topic. The architecture that we use is we have a linked open data architecture, which we have our standards. There is in our new system also an API that you can use. We have the protocols and authorizations, and it doesn't really matter who wants to request our data, so they don't have to go to the website. They also can request just by the API, all based on linked data, and hopefully, so, because there is, of course, a long way to go, but by doing this, we create a network of information instead of islands. So if you are interested in doing something with us together regarding this, you're very welcome during the lunch, so that we have one solution for all use. And then it looks more like this. So this search and you find just text. What we see here is an example of information that comes from several sources in the archive, but connected to each other. A photo with a name, and the name is connected to Wikidata, and the name is also in the notary archives, but we also have a paper, if we have a person card. So it shouldn't be necessary to search all these islands for your information, but just with one entrance, that information that's connected to each other, that's the next step. So where does this bring us? This is again our archive, and I told you already a bit of how much that we did in terms of digitization. So if this is our building and this is our collection, we have 20% done. That's quite substantial, but still we have 80% of terra incognita regarding to information. Also in our organization, we have the discussion, is it really necessary to get all this information digitized? But we say, yes, because you could have the argument of, yeah, but maybe not everything is interesting. But we don't know if it's interesting. Because in a lot of archives, the finding aid we now have is so limited, like say the departments of the University of Amsterdam. Yeah, they are limited, and they say just correspondence, and then you have a file and boxes full of them. But what's actually in these files, and who is being named in it, and what topics are being considered, you don't get that out of the just simple description. So we say this terra incognita is this is your new greenfield in doing archival research, and you want to connect what's in here, and that's what you already done. So our aim is now really to make the whole archive digital, searchable, findable, and connected to the rest of the world. And that gives us something that's probably quite new as a concept. And I could also have been started with this, but I think it's good to see, because this gives a bit of a summary, I think, of what I tried to say this morning. Is we always looked as archives as this institution of knowledge, as institutions as preservation, so a safe place, sometimes literally safe. But maybe it's time to get this perspective a bit differently. This is what we developed with Cavan, that's the Association for Archivists in the Netherlands, and what we try now to make something that's being, and it's accepted, but that we're going to find out what the implications of this is regard the archives not as a safe, but as something that's here in the middle, and not an archive as a safe, but an archive as a utility. So something that adds value, like an electricity plant or like the water system, but then for information. And also something that we do here now regarding to digital information is that we say what we host is not per se information that comes in from these companies or from archival law, but in fact all kinds of information that's being digital regardless of who created it or what context or for who or when, but with this one thing that we bring as archives, and that's sustainable accessibility. we standardize, we use entities. This is already in our veins, I think. But we can extend that and bring this more into the world of also other kinds of digital information and connect to all kinds of information based on linked data. It can be museums, can be municipals, it can be whatever you think of. And on the other side, to put this user central. And that's one then that we put deliberately also in this picture, because how quicker information that we preserve is being digital, you also see that the time of that this information is created is getting shorter. And what we already see is that there is a new target group coming, civil rights groups, communities, pressure groups who want to do something because something's happening in the city. And what we try to do is to provide them also, and to help them also to find the information that they want to look for. So that means that we are not a save anymore, we are a utility for giving access, and there we are again, accessibility in optimized form, also with, and there's also something important, we think it's not just putting this online, but also have this building and also have your employees with this knowledge of the collection that help you for all kinds of questions from the past and from now. So as Bert sometimes says, that makes us a center for history and transparency, or for history and accessibility, name it, but this place where you go to, where you can find information, it's digital, you can find it, it can be from 500, 700 years ago, but it's there, it's searchable, you can connect it, and it can be from the now, and this makes, I think, a broad group in society, adds value to all kinds of research, from historical research to what we see infection diseases or climate change research we already had. And I think that's the archive as utility. And that brings me to 41 minutes. So I think I should have 5 minutes, but this is the end of the talk. Yeah, this is the end of the talk. And I can imagine that there are questions. So maybe there is time for questions.